What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Beyond Ordinary podcast, where we connect with great people doing great things to inspire you to do the same. Got another banger episode today. We're going to be talking about franchising that business model. I have a great guest with me today. He's been in the game for literally decades, had a 9-figure exit with his franchise. So welcome today to the Beyond Ordinary, John. How you doing today?
It's my pleasure. And remember, I've already had two nine-figure exits.
Oh, my apologies. Look, listen to that. He had multiple 9-figure exits. That's crazy. That is crazy. So, you mind telling the people what you do and how you did your 9-figure exits?
Sure, I'm giving my 55 minutes or 55 years in a few minutes. I started when I was at the University of Buffalo 55 years ago and took an H&R Block course, loved it, and started working for H&R Block. 12 years later, I was running 250 locations, happy. My dad was a visionary, and you're not old enough to remember a world without computers, but there weren't even a million desktops in the country. He bought one of the first Apple computers. He loved it, and he decided, he was the CFO of a public company. He decided we should computerize taxes. So in 1981, we both quit our jobs and built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it. Got blessed and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. Mel had died. We bought 6 offices from his widow. We changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, merged the two companies, went public, and 15 years later sold it for $483 million. I had a 3-year non-compete, but my non-compete didn't cover Canada. And having grown up in Buffalo, I knew the Canadian tax system. I'd done Canadian taxes. So we opened Liberty Tax in Canada, and within 3 years became a top 100 retail chain. Then when my non-compete ended in 2000, came back to the United States. Now I had to compete with my own name, my own software, my own people, my own system. And yet not only did we go faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than them and H&R Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years. Again, a public company worth $500 million. Again, I sold my stock. And 5 years ago, started a company called Loyalty Brands. And in Loyalty Brands, we have 8 different franchise companies. We have 3 focus industries. Number 1 is construction, led by our roofing division, roofing, siding, and solar. We have tax, led by our A-Tax, fastest growing tax service in the United States, national. And we have the fastest growing of all our brands is pets, and led by our mobile pet grooming, which is called Zoom and Groom, which is already in 3 years now, we're the largest mobile grooming service in the country. We're in 25 states, 80 cities, and that'll be a household name in 5 years with 3,000 locations all across the United States, everywhere where there's a city of more than 50,000 people.
Wow.
So that's my 55 years in a nutshell.
Hey, you got it in about 2 minutes. That's honestly amazing that you were able to build, multiple 9-figure companies, went to a whole different market in Canada, and basically rinse and repeat. Goes to show you that once you acquire those skills, they pretty much stick with you. You know what I mean? And you can adapt them to any market once you get those skills. That's cool. So you had mentioned something, how you and your father developed a software. Nobody was buying it, and obviously Rome wasn't built in one day. You didn't just hit 9 figures over the years, and you probably did have some trials and tribulations and some struggles. So what did you do during those tough times in order to push through and get to where you are today?
You're right. Trials and tribulations are life, and God doesn't put anyone here to skate through. And I heard recently that people that are most successful have made the most mistakes. So I probably made more mistakes than anyone you know. And each time I'm a competitor, and they got to kill me to stop me. So there's no stopping me. I'm going to win, and I'm going to figure a way to overcome obstacles. The winners overcome obstacles. Losers get knocked down and stay down. So again, they got to kill me to stop me.
Hey, I like that attitude. They got to kill you to stop you. You just got to keep going, and that's why I keep telling myself in terms of this podcasting game. I know it's a long game. A lot of people quit very early, but you got to stick with it and have a longer time horizon. I was literally just watching Alex Ramosi right before we got on here, and he talks about how a lot of people don't expand their time horizon in terms of when to allow themselves success. Like a lot of people like take it day by day or week by week, but he likes to extend his time horizon between, years or decades. So when you zoom out like that and you give yourself, that time, especially to develop those skills, like you'll reach your goals for sure. So another question I have for you. So I had a conversation with an entrepreneur about this. I want to ask you this question too. So, what is a mindset shift that entrepreneurs need to have once they reach the 7-figure mark to get them to that 8-9 figure range?
You know, the I've been asked the number one question I've been asked in my career is what's the how have you had this great exponential growth? What's the key number one thing? And actually, I realized about 6 weeks ago that although I give the same answer that which I believe is the correct answer, I realize there are many reasons, and to narrow it down to one thing is just too basic. You don't tell the whole story. And so I love top 10 lists, starting with the Bible and the 10 Commandments. And so I have top 10 most important things to do as a franchisee, as a master franchise, as an employee. We have our top 10 list. And I came up with the top 10 things you need to do to grow exponentially. And actually, I ended up with 12. And several of my top 10 lists have more than 10. And I think that's okay because I sort of copied the Big Ten football, college football division. They have 18 teams in the Big Ten. So I said, if they can have 18, I can have 12. So I have 12 key things that are critical to grow exponentially versus just grow. And I did a whole hour presentation on that. It's on my website on the key things to grow exponentially. But the number one most important thing is perseverance. As I said earlier, God doesn't put anyone here to skate. You're going to face adversity all the time, and there are obstacles each and every day. Not a day goes by that I'm not presented with some problem or obstacle, and some of them are minuscule, and some of them are incredibly large. But my goal, my drive is to solve each and every situation that occurs. I'm like a chess player. I'm a life master chess player. And with me is if this happens, then I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that. And so I think of business and exponential growth as a contest that I'm a fanatical competitor.
Okay. I like that. I like that. Just perseverance, something that was touched on a little earlier. So, in terms of your marketing strategy, how were you able to market your franchise to get it nationally recognized?
First of all, there you have to have a opportunity. There has to be a niche. There has to be a place for you. And when I started competing with H&R Block in 1982, H&R Block had 9,000 locations, and the second largest competitor only had 250. So it's obvious there's a huge vacancy there. There's a huge void. In every industry, there's always room for a number two player. There's always room for a Target or a Burger King or a Jackson Hewitt. There's always room for a second and third, maybe fourth player in every industry. So there has to be a niche. And then most importantly, you have to have differentiators that make people why people come to you versus the number one guy. And if David had gone onto the field with the same sword and shield and armor as Goliath, there wouldn't be a David and Goliath story. He'd be the 189th guy killed by Goliath. So you have to have differentiators. So we've always had objective things that we do better in each industry than our competitor.
Hmm. Okay, so you were pretty much just differentiated yourself between your competitors. Is that right? So how do you go about even identifying what your competitive advantage will be, and how and if that competitive, because not every competitive advantage is equal. You know what I'm saying? There might be one opportunity within your business that you can improve on, but it might not give you as much leverage as something else. So how did you go about identifying that?
Yeah, you have to look at your competitor. And, Sam Walton said, you don't just look at your competitors, you look at all industries and every consumer experience to improve your service to customers. You don't just look at he didn't just look at Kmart or Sears. He looked back 40, 50 years ago. He looked at when he was staying at a hotel or at a restaurant, or anytime he was in public, he was looking for opportunities. So you always look at the competitors' opportunities and find some way to do it better. I'll give you an example that in our industry, in the tax industry, which I just completed my 55th year, that people think of it as 3.5 months business, but really we do most of our business in just 4 weeks. And so it's really not even a 3.5 month business, it's a 4 week business. And so you need to think, okay, how can I do a better job during those 4 weeks to take a bigger share of market? And you look at H&R Block, for example, they're like a bank. They're open 9 to 9 Monday through Friday. And I love driving by a H&R Block office at 9 or 8:40 in the morning and seeing customers waiting outside and seeing preparers inside with the lights on playing on their computer, because they're like a bank. They don't open until 9 o'clock. It shouldn't take a rocket science to figure that you don't want that customer standing outside, that you want to expand your hours to take take care of that customer and provide better service. It's easy to provide better service. And then at 5 after 9, there's a knock at the door at H&R Block because they lock their door at 9 o'clock. And they don't even get out of their chair. They just wave them away. Come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. And some come back tomorrow, but some come over to us because we stay open until the last customer leaves. So that's a differentiator. Expanding your hours during peak is a clear differentiator. That's what we do better than H&R Block or virtually all of our competitors. So we look for weaknesses in our competitors' customer service. And we find them mostly not just by observing, but by listening to the customers. Every year we're growing fast, and a third of our customers coming in are new. And so we ask them why they came in, and we find out the inferior performances of our competitors.
Yeah, I like that. Just taking a look at what people are doing, and that is pretty obvious. I mean, if you over here got customers at your door talking about, "Hey, I'm trying to give you money," and you just don't even like, oh my goodness, like it honestly just baffles me just how some people just don't do the bare minimum. You know what I mean? Like for example, I'm a podcaster. I don't have my own podcast studio. Sometimes when I go in person, I need to like book a studio. And so I found this new studio, and I literally texted him and I said, "Hey, I'm willing to pay, for the first 3 hours up front, whatever, like to get a discount." And this person, I've had to triple text them because I have a guest that's on coming in this weekend. I need a quick turnaround, and this person is slow to get back to me. So all I'm gonna do is just go to the next person, and that's something that is like it's just so basic. It's like literally be responsive. You know what I mean? You literally don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just be responsive. You don't have to expand your hours. You don't have to get more manpower. It's literally just be responsive. So it's just honestly just crazy, like just seeing how people are literally just fumbling in doing the basic stuff, the easy stuff in terms of business. You know what I mean? Let alone trying to get to 7, 8, 9 figures. So
You're absolutely right. It starts with just doing the basic well, and that is becoming less and less the standard in the United States. I'm sorry to say the service in this country and all industries has diminished as long as I can remember. And the team that wins the football game They blocked best and they tackled best and they threw the ball best. They caught best. It comes down to basics. It's not the team that wins the Super Bowl almost never, if ever, won because of some trick play. They just had better blocking, better tackling, better running, better catching.
And I also think because I had this thought for the longest time that really what I think it is a lot of people, because you just brought up the Super Bowl example. A lot of people just want to be good. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I made it to the NFL, and so I was good enough to make it to the NFL, but I'm not great enough to actually win the Super Bowl. So I think a lot of businesses are kind of like that. Like people start businesses and it's like, yeah, it's okay. Like maybe I might make six figures, multiple six figures, and I live a comfortable life. But in order for me to be great, I don't know if I want to put in that work to push through. So I think a lot of people, it really just is complacency, and it goes back to what you were talking about in terms of perseverance, that they don't want to persevere because it's a lot more comfortable for them to just stay where they're at and continue to get that steady income that they've had, as opposed to trying to continue to push towards being great and being better. So
Yeah, I brought in over 5,000 franchisees in my career. And so I mentored thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people. And you're exactly right. Um, even the best, even the best, the best top 10%, some of them or many of them, once they get the house that they want, the car, the education for their children, the boat, the vacations, they stop driving. They stop trying to be better. So there's very little traffic on the extra mile.
I think it's also a blessing and a curse in disguise, because what it just shows is that if you are Alex Ramosi says that it's just so easy to win, because if you are just going to be that person that stresses over the little things, that it wants to actually be great and persevere, you're gonna beat like 90% of the competition. You're not the you know what I mean? Like there's plenty of teams in the NBA that are like, and ESPN, when they go and they're like, hey, like these are the people that are competing for a championship. It's only like 5 teams that are really competing for a championship. And then everybody else is kind of just like going through the motions, or they're tanking so that way they can get a good lottery pick. So even though it's, I believe, 32 teams or 30 teams in the NBA, it's really only like 4 or 5 that you really have competition with. So I think that it's the same way in business. Like you might have a whole bunch of competitors, but how many of those competitors are actually trying to be great and continue to persevere, push through, be innovative, and take their service or business to the next level? It's not many. It's not many.
No, you got to be fanatical, and the greatest success comes for those that are the most fanatical about winning. In Made in America by Sam Walton, he said, people ask me, what's the difference between me and other people? He said, the only thing I can figure is my drive to win. That is differentiates me from everyone else. I'm unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that. Exactly. Oh man. So we talked about, so you said that you've, had over 5,000, franchisees come on and whatnot. So at what point did you recognize that, okay, this is like, I need to like start a franchise? At what point should a business, decide to take that route with their business?
In my book, which is free to all your listeners, by the way, um, I talk about the second biggest mistake I made at Jackson Hewitt was that I didn't franchise right away. And I came from a company, H&R Block, that had, when I started in 1969, was over 90% franchise. And so somehow it didn't occur to me that that was the way to go. So when we bought Mel Jackson, we had 6 company stores. And first 4 months later, we had 11. And then a year after that, we had 15. A year after that, we had 22. And to grow in 2.5 years from 6 to 22 was pretty impressive. I mean, that's top 5% probably, or 2% of all companies in the United States. But our goal, our big, hairy, audacious goal was to have 9,000 and be bigger than Block, have 9,001 and have one more store than H&R Block. And I realized that pace, I would have to be 1,000 years old by the time I got bigger than Block. And so we immediately started franchising in 1986. And in all my companies since then, that's all I do is franchise. It is the way to grow. Is as a franchisor, you build this great system, a highly competitive, best system in your industry, and then you find people who will follow that system.
Hmm. I think that's probably one of the hardest parts, though, is finding people that are going to follow that system. So, if somebody was looking to try to start their own franchise, how do they go about making like screening the franchisees to make sure that they are the right fit and are actually going to follow the blueprint that they laid out?
You're right. Out of the 5,000 people I brought in, not one followed 100%. So it's not only is it incredibly difficult, it's impossible. And the number one phrase I've used in my life is follow the system. And so you just keep training them and explaining to them and guiding them uh, and imploring them, begging them sometimes. I mean, you just got to follow the system. And I've had 1,000 millionaires, but I've had 1,000 people go out of business. And Myles, it didn't matter how smart you were or experienced or educated. None of that matters. I have a blueprint for success, a recipe for success. If a great chef gave you a recipe and it called for a pinch of salt, why would you put in a thimble of salt? I mean, what are you thinking? They say the people that have been the most successful have made the most mistakes. I've made every mistake that you're ever going to imagine. Can you imagine you joining the income tax industry at your age? And I've been doing this for 55 years, done 100 million tax returns, created 1,000 millionaires. Can you imagine thinking you know better than me? I mean, that's just stupid. You're not going to invent anything that myself and the other 5,000 people haven't thought of. And worse than that, tried. We've tried everything you're going to be able to think of. Don't come in thinking you need to reinvent the wheel. We give you the system that works in your market. All you have to do is follow the recipe. And yet, out of as I said, 5,000 franchisees, not one has listened 100%. It's human nature. It goes against human nature. They don't listen to God. I was in church 35 years ago, and the minister said, every one of us sins every day. And I realized months later, I didn't think of it right then. Well, if you're not going to listen to God, you're certainly not going to listen to John Hewitt, right? So that's the toughest thing to do. It goes against human nature.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. It's definitely tough that people just want to put their own spin on things and trying to, reinvent the wheel. So what processes or training did you do to at least like try to do I guess, a little hand holding for your franchisees? Because there's one thing if, like the example that you gave in terms of a recipe, it's one thing if you get, Gordon Ramsay's recipe, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be Gordon Ramsay. You're going to need, a little more training and stuff. So how did you do that for your franchisees?
Yeah, I brag that we'll train you till you're blue in the face. So you start out and you come in and you get a initial training, and then before the first tax season, you're on a call with us every week. During the tax season, every week, twice a week, we're telling you this is what you need to be focusing on this week. This is the type of customer that comes in. This is the type of marketing you need to do. And here's another franchisee as a proof of concept. And so we do something like 65 calls a year of constant ongoing training and guidance. And then we follow that up. We have intermediate training and advanced training and top gun training. And we have just numerous training, and we just work with you to ensure you know the system, and you see the proof of concept. You see franchisees that are implementing the system and doing it well.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like it's constant training, following up, stuff like that. You're not necessarily just like, okay, here's the manual, just go off and run with it. Because obviously they're not gonna follow it, as you've seen.
Yeah, think about the national impact of a phone call. That when you're CEO and you have various levels of management, I tell my direct reports this, and the telephone game. they sort of get it and they bias it and take it to the next level and take it to the next level and get to the franchisee. So they get mixed messages. But you get to hear you get to hear monthly and often weekly from me. And so my message can't get diluted by all these levels of people between me and the customer. You get to hear it from the horse's mouth, the self-proclaimed great granddaddy of tax preparation.
Self-proclaimed. I like that. So I know that delegating is a very important task in terms of running a successful business, but a lot of leaders fall short of that. Like, can you explain why that is and how they can improve in terms of their delegating abilities?
Yeah, I can. The only, since I can't identify, I've always been a great delegator, and I tell people and they don't believe me. I tell them because I'm lazy and I don't want to do any work. So I learned when I was a kid to teach other people or get other people to do my work. And so at a very young age, and so I've always been an excellent delegator. It's sort of like Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. When Tom Sawyer was painting the fence, and Huckleberry Finn came along, and Tom sat and watched as Huckleberry Finn painted the fence for him in the book Tom Sawyer. And so, I've heard all the excuses that I can't find anyone, that no one can do it as good as I do it. If you want it done right, do it yourself, etc. But done, if you want to grow mediocrely, then do everything yourself. You, if I was couldn't delegate, I couldn't have had 5,000 franchisees and 10,000 offices and two $500 million companies. I just have a little $1 million or $2 million company and doing and working mindlessly, crazily 80 hours a week myself and wasting my life away when I was capable about so much more. And people that aren't accustomed to being leaders have very difficult time delegating. So, I try to teach them. And occasionally I've been successful. I remember one time I had a non-delegator, and she was director of support, a young girl, maybe 29 years old, and she couldn't delegate. She had a team of about 12 people, and one day there was 4 or 5 people working in her department, and in her department was the copy machine that I used, and my secretary was out to lunch, and I needed copies of some document. So I went over, and this example set her free and taught her to delegate. While I went into her department to the copy machine, there was 4 or 5 people were sitting around on phone or working, and she was at the copy machine making copies. So I went over to one of the people and said, "I need copies of this immediately." So her employee that reported to her went over, knocked her off the copy machine, and made copies for me and brought them to me. And that was like a light went off. She didn't go to the copy machine anymore. She handed them to her employee and had them do the copies. So occasionally I've been successful by setting an example of teaching people the importance of delegation, of empowering people. Not only do you get more done, but if I give you an assignment and this often you're going to improve on it. You're going to figure a way to do it faster, better, add value. And so the system is going to get better because you're doing something in a way I hadn't thought of. So not every time, but occasionally the system is going to get better just because you delegate it.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love that. I love that example, and I think delegating is just key. Like, there's literally no such thing as scaling without delegating because you just can't do everything yourself. And for me, like, I have a I have a marketing agency that helps, podcasters and YouTubers expand their brand with short form content. So I have a team of editors, I have a team of creative directors, thumbnail editors. I have like a big team, and that's something huge for me in terms of having to delegate, because there's literally no way I could possibly do everything myself. And one thing that I like to keep in mind is that somebody else solve this problem. Whatever problem that I have in terms of scaling, delegating, whatever it may be, somebody has already solved it, meaning that I just need to figure it out. Like this isn't this, isn't working, or this business model isn't working, or whatever. It's I just haven't been able to figure out and solve this problem, or find somebody who can solve the problem for me. So yeah, that's big. Well, all right, John, we're getting to the end of the interview, but I just wanted to ask you real quick, uh if somebody came to you today and said, hey man, I watched your interview with Myles on the Beyond Ordinary, and I'm trying to franchise, I'm trying to get like you, have like 9-figure exit, I just don't even know where to start, what advice would you give them?
I do a weekly webinar of mentoring and guiding people. And one of the most common questions I get asked is that, how do I have this great business and I want to franchise it? And so one of my hour presentations is on should you franchise or not and how to do it. And so on my website, you can get a free book. You can get copies of whether I should be a franchisee or be a mom and pop, self-employed, whether I should franchise, what are the top 10 ways to grow exponentially. So I do a lot of free mentoring for people that helps them do what I've done. And our mission statement, Myles, is having fun, improving lives. And I think that on Monday morning, if you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place. So I don't believe in thank God it's Friday at all. I believe it's thank God it's Monday. And secondly, there's nothing more rewarding than improving lives. When I was young and a teenager, I knew I was going to get rich. I was cocky because I was confident, but it has to be called cocky because I hadn't done it yet. Now I've done it. So now I'm confident. But back then, I knew I was going to get rich and I thought I'd just retire. But I learned the journey is the joy. Changing lives is so rewarding and they pay it forward. If I change your life and you have 4 children, then I changed their lives. And they have grandchildren, then you have grandchildren, I changed their lives. And then you have employees and you change their lives and you pay it forward. So changing lives is just so rewarding. They got to kill me to stop me. I'm always going to be working, always going to be committed to improving lives.
Hey, that's what it's all about, just paying it forward. You know what I mean? What's the point in having all this wealth and all this knowledge if you're not even going to share it with anybody? So, yeah, no, I definitely like that. And, I actually had this thought earlier that I think that it's in human nature that reciprocity bias, that everybody wants to, give back to a certain extent. And, that looks different for everybody. And especially the scale in which they do it looks different for everybody. We were just talking about how some people just want to be good and other people want to be great. So some people might, give back to just their local community and they might do it for a few years. And there's other people such as yourself who are like, nah, I want to have a, worldwide brand and, give away all my good stuff for free, and really make a huge impact. So I like that. So John, is there anything today, like what is the number one thing that you want people to take away from this interview?
Life is very short. Find something you love to do. Work hard. Persevere.
All right. I like that. Short and sweet. All right, John, thank you so much for coming on to the Beyond Ordinary. It was definitely a pleasure having you. Where can the people find you at?
At loyaltybrands.com. As I said, your listeners can get a free copy of my book that talks about my journey, and they can build a 9-figure business for themselves.
Absolutely. Hey, y'all get that free book. He got free game. He just gave out free game just now, and he got another book free of charge that goes more in depth. Another great episode of the Beyond Ordinary. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Please leave a rating if you're listening to the audio version, and if you're on YouTube, please subscribe, hit that like button, and until next time, peace.